Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, creator and founder of UnWoke.Academy. Today, I'm taking the unusual step of creating an intro video for a few different reasons. If you don't know my name, Jonathan Broadbent, it's no surprise. Don't worry about it. It's actually by design. I was one of those people for several decades who operated kind of behind the scenes, and it wasn't really until I got frustrated enough with the problems, issues, and mayhem that I see on woke Wall Street that I decided to come out and take a public face. I never intended to be an influencer or social media anything, and I certainly had no idea how to create videos, conduct interviews, and be presented with the opportunity like today's conversation with Alicia Powe. You'll notice during the course of today's conversation that at a few points I actually mispronounce Alicia Powe's name. I call her Alicia, my bad. Her name is actually Alicia Powe. It's a mispronunciation, it's slight, but I do try to present the best, most polished professional image for people who come on and join us on the program. So it is Alicia Powe. The next thing is focusing for a moment on news media and social media. You may not know this, but years ago, I was hired by one of those Wall Street types of firms because of my background and area of expertise. Well, I got phone calls from various different news publications, from Wall Street Journal to Financial Times, all sorts of different media outlets used to call around and look for people with a certain area of expertise or skill set like I have and ask for public comment. Well, I quickly found out that that firm that had hired me strictly forbid me communicating with the media. I actually had to go through this sort of PR department and get something scripted, and then they would feed it to me, and I was supposed to dictate that back as if it was my own thoughts. I never did allow that to happen. I have no interest in somebody scripting my comments for me, so I just didn't make comment during those period of years to the media. I stayed silent. But that really clues us in as to the significance, importance, and intention of things like mega financial, the globalist financial firms, in tightly controlling what you are permitted to hear and what that narrative looks like. Folks like me were not permitted, in spite of the fact that I was hired specifically because I had a long background and a very specific niche where I was recognized with some expertise. I was still not permitted to speak. So flash forward all these years later to 2024, we have that happening on a monstrous scale. Our media and social media has cracked down and is censoring the things that we're allowed to say. We saw it with specific issues like the COVID protocols and narrative, but also we saw it with things like the Hunter Biden laptop and all sorts of other things. There tends to be, in my observation, a political leaning to it, and that is both unfortunate, uncomfortable, but also harmful and damaging to society. We need to push back, and I firmly believe that our way out of the nightmare that we're in is by pushing for free speech and freedom of the press. I wanted to acknowledge the error on my part. It's Alicia Powe, and also kind of set the stage a little bit. So here's an intro. Alicia is an investigative journalist and multimedia reporter. Alicia's work is featured on numerous outlets, including The Gateway Pundit, Project Veritas, Red Voice Media, WorldNet Daily, Town Hall, and Media Research Center, where she uncovers fraud and abuse in government, media, big tech, big pharma, and public corruption. Alicia has a Bachelor's of Science in Political Science from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. She served in Correspondence Department of George W. Bush's administration and as a war room analyst for the Rudy Giuliani Presidential Committee. Without further ado, let's dive right into this interview with Alicia Powe. Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Today I have Alicia Powe joining me. And Alicia, I did some searches online because I was delighted to have the opportunity to speak with her. And Alicia suffers from the same thing I do in web searches. She has somebody out there in the world with the exact same name and same spelling who is a soccer star in Europe. I'm going to encourage you at some point during the course of this conversation, or as soon as you click at the end of this conversation, do a search for Alicia Powe, and you're going to look for the journalist, not the soccer player. And for me, look for the whatever I am, activist and the finance guy in the United States, not the actor in London. Alicia Powe has an unbelievable, extraordinary background in journalism. You're really going to want to hear this. A lot of the stuff that you have been picking up and reading, the truth about America and where we are, a lot of it's been written and covered by Alicia. Unfortunately, due to technological circumstances, we can't have live video right now with Alicia. Hopefully at some point in the future we can. So bear with me, we have a still image. But here's something that occurred to me as a good lead in to today's discussion. And it actually came a few days ago from Bill Rice Jr., who was a guest on this program. Quoting directly from Bill Rice Jr., "The key to solving a lot of our issues will come from journalism, because it's journalism that creates the narrative, that create policies and the mandates, as we recently saw. You have bogus and false journalism, you're going to have dangerous and harmful policies flowing from it. The answer is to get accurate, truthful journalism to the mainstream." And toward that end, we have people like Alicia Powe. We need to be thankful. We, the people, realize that our media is corrupted. It is corrupt, often with misleading false narratives that is propaganda. The opposite, the antithesis, the way to find truth is people like Alicia Powe. She's a hero and a champion. Alicia, thank you for joining us today. Can you please give us your bio?
Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're listening, and Merry Christmas. My name is Alicia Powe. I've been in the political atmosphere of work since around 2003, 2002, when I sort of had this awakening that things were not right. There was so much hypocrisy, and there was so much people who were emphatic about what they knew, and what they knew about politics and religion especially, but really they had spent very little time studying the topics, studying history, studying science. We kind of all just going along to get along and accepting our inherited beliefs. So that caused me to start to take some time out and spend more time alone as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and ask God questions. And I had come to the conclusion that everything that we had been fed, or spoon-fed rather, throughout our lives, from the television and through our entertainment industry and in our schools and a lot of our religious beliefs that we take to heart, they hadn't been scrutinized. We're in this world where we just accept it and go along with things. And it's actually fundamentally wrong. And in fact, often an inversion of what the actual truth is versus what they present to us. And so that's where this journey started for me. First, I was an A student in elementary school, but I became a failing student growing up in the middle of Manhattan, kind of asking these transcendental questions back then. 9/11 had happened when I was in high school, just a few miles away, and I was automatically defaulted to be a leftist, liberal, radical, anti-Bush, Democrat, you name it, right? By default of everyone I was around, the celebrity culture is very rampant throughout New York. You're probably going to take the bus, or I used to sell as an artist a lot of my work to these celebrities and be a part of that culture. And so, geez, we're going back a lot of years, Jonathan, but basically when I became an A student after that, asking questions, spending time alone, and I went on to start a Republican club at Borough Manhattan Community College, where I started getting straight A's again. And I was really proud of myself, developing a new fitness routine, listening to lots of, I guess you could call it self-help, and reading self-help books, studying religion on my own, studying American history, especially on my own, was enlightening and changed my life. Growing up, they'd say, "Are you a Democrat or Republican?" I remember we were all sitting on a rock. Most of my peers were smoking marijuana, as they do in Manhattan teenager culture. And some people came up to us and asked us to register to vote at the age of 17, 18. And everybody's like, "Are you a Democrat?" "Yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm a Democrat. My grandma's a Democrat." "Yeah, I guess I'm a Democrat." I mean, literally, these fundamental decisions on that we think politics doesn't matter. but it plays an intricate role in all of our decision-making process, in all of our microculture, not just on a national level. So then at Burrow Community College, like I said, I was the president of the art club. I founded a Republican club, and I started to realize all the professors, they were Marxist. They were Marxist. They were proselytizing all of these far left-wing atheistic views, socialism on every class, even in gym class. And I had already trained going back. I took a year off before I went back. And I had already became so knowledgeable about American history and the founding of the two parties. I did a lot of research and introspection. And so this became my career, debating these professors or embarrassing the professors with facts, semester after semester, class after class. I became well known in my college as that Republican girl. And, it's a lot of irony in that today I don't think the Republican Party today is something that I'm proud of, but historically, legislatively, I would say the GOP has been on the side of what most of us stand for, which is, fairness and merit. And, but beyond that, let's skip ahead to my career path. So then I became I worked on the Rudy Giuliani presidential committee. He had lost after that while on the campaign. I worked in his war room. It was my job to transcribe every speech every Democrat presidential candidate said. It was my job to just transcribe all the talk radio where every Democrat and Republican presidential candidate was mentioned. And I mean, transcribe. I don't think we had all the software we have now to speed up the stuff. and so that they could prepare it for speeches. And I was delighted to start that job at 5 a.m. and then go back. Oh, and then I kept that same job with Rudy Giuliani's presidential committee to where I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, pursued a political science degree while on the campaign, even though he lost. And I can tell you how and why he lost, and how Barack Obama emerged suddenly when Hillary Clinton was slated to win. But that might be a story for another time. I met people who had worked at the White House, and it dawned on me, well, holy moly, I could work, intern or work at the White House too. I never even thought of it. And so I began to train, so to speak, for that opportunity. And in August 2008, I was accepted as a White House intern. And I worked with the Bush administration in the correspondence department, where we collect and read and tailor all of the president's mail and all of the comments from the public. And that was around the 2008 crisis when the financial market crashed, and Barney Mae, Freddie Mac, and all the housing crisis happened. And we would be inundated with phone calls in financial emergencies or on the brink of losing their homes. After I graduated college, I began working at the National Journalism Center, where they place you at different media organizations while you train as a journalist. And then I worked from there at Human Events, townhall.com, Media Research Center. And from after, I think it was around 2013, the media landscape and the conservative atmosphere, so to speak, of media changed. Suddenly there's lots of news websites spawning. We had this virality to things across social media we hadn't seen before. And so I would kind of freelance between all of these new websites, Young Cons, the Federalist Papers. There was this place called Liberty News that was sued by Perkins Coie, and they wrote hit pieces on us. I think I might have contributed one article there to be pulled in this fake scandal reported on by Media Matters of like Russian operatives. And then that was very turbulent for about 2 or 3 years. I stayed home writing and doing lots of writing. And then I worked I got a job with WorldNet Daily, the first online conservative publication. I was a Washington correspondent. And there I really got my legs of investigative journalism, which I didn't really plan on ever really even thinking about doing. But I got assigned to cover the Seth Rich story and his murder and investigate that every day at WorldNet Daily. I got really far with it. And then I wanted to do more. So where is it? I began working at the Gateway Pundit. after WorldNet Daily went bankrupt, and I don't know if I should talk about it, but like raided by the Mueller probe, I think a lot of conservative outlets had to go through all of this kind of government squeezing over reporting the truth, or at least asking questions. And even Fox News at the time had been retaliated by the government or these Democrat lawyers for reporting on Seth Rich's case. So then I worked at the Gateway Pundit, and from the Gateway Pundit, I became an undercover journalist with Project Veritas. That was life-changing for sure. That was probably no longer in the civilian world with how we were working and the kind of goals we were taking on a daily basis. It was what President Trump at the time called the special forces of journalism. And then I maintained working at the Gateway Pundit until recently, and I'm still with WorldNet Daily, which I technically have been periodically over the years. Now that's my main place where I'll be publishing my reports. So long career. I've just encapsulated approximately 20 to 21 years, Jonathan.
That's an amazing career spanning those years, and what a fortuitous series of events that led you to such profound self-discovery and really truly analyzing the distinctions between our two political parties, the Democrat versus Republican. And it's pretty telling. People who watch my podcast know I came from very much a very similar background where everyone sort of defaulted into far left liberal Democrat. And it wasn't until later exposure to US history and things like it led me to the same conclusions. I want to pause and encourage everybody to be aware of where the journalism, where the news comes from that you're getting, and what we're doing as a society to encourage and cultivate better access to more accurate news. And I drew this analogy in the conversation I had with Bill Rice Jr. a few days ago, and it fits here. And I think it's a major problem, and it's a big part of the reason that I was motivated to ask Alicia Powe onto the show with me today. And that is, we need to do a better job as a society of putting our money where our interests are. And that, for me, is a big part of the whole idea behind UnWoke. What do we fund with the actions and activities that we take? The adage that we have is "Dis the globalist left." Know where you donate, invest, and spend. Where media comes in is the funding that goes into far left media outlets. It is a crying shame that somebody with Alicia Powe's chops and her background, her expertise, her investigative journalism is not one of those news anchor, very highly compensated. She is making significant sacrifices in her life to bring us what she does. These are outlets that she is daring to report the truth and get the real accurate information out to we the people, the masses. And let's compare. So you look, and I'm just going to sort of broadly paint mainstream media with a broad brush. These people that sit in front of the camera and spout off nonsense and propaganda make millions of dollars. Alicia Powe is not the millions of dollars type of person. She is the bootstrap, put it all together, figure out how to pay for it later, driving her car on her dime out there into places, finding answers, uncovering stuff, and doing true investigative journalism. That is dying, and we need to bring it back. I say we should flip the script. I've been saying this to Alicia since a mutual friend introduced us a year and a half, 2 years ago. If there's any way in my power that I could see not only her accurately, truly well compensated for the work that she does, but also I think she needs about 100 young, next up and coming Alicia Powe for her to bring under wing and cultivate that next generation of investigative journalism. I'll get off my soapbox there, but that's really, to me, in its core, at its heart, why I was really looking forward to this opportunity to speak directly with Alicia Powe. the first thing to do, and this is easy, it's free, they're not asking you to pull your checkbook out. But if you can, please do find her, help fund her. We need funding for her. She didn't ask me to say that. I'm just saying it because I can sense and I know it costs a lot of money for her to do what she does. But the free part is just go online, do that search. Alicia Powe, it's like power without the R at the end, Powe.
Yeah, I'm not very active on social media, but there's reasons for that. But however, I will be relaunching the whole social media X account stuff again. For a time, for work, I had to cut it all off. In fact, for a few years, but you know, I'll get back to that. But I can't really. You can send me an email, of course, but I'm not too hard to find. I'm on Instagram. I still have a Facebook account I haven't used in quite a few years, really. There's reason for that as well, but you guys understand what these systems are. I suppose this audience does.
Yep, they do. So knowing what you get into and what you're investigating, I don't fault you. So look up Alicia Powe, and here's the thing I think you should do. I ask this of you, my audience. Find her through me. I will continue to follow and periodically like, tag, comment on, report on, or forward things that I know that she has done and is researching. At some point, we're going to find, not just for Alicia Powe, but for many, many people like her, a better way of funding and organizing the media that we consume. We're seeing it in social media, and I think it's wonderful. I think that all of this stuff, like Elon Musk coming in and taking over Twitter and turning it into X, where I see, yes, there are some imperfections, and I know people who complain still about it, but overwhelmingly, it's way better than it was. And some of these new platforms like Gab and things like it, I think they're really good opportunities. We're seeing it and I'm blessed to be part of the initiative pushing back and creating parallel economy in finance. And you see Dan Bongino and people like him involved in payment processing and stuff. Good. The more the merrier. We need a lot of it. Journalism needs to be right up there at the top of the list. And if you heard that quote, and I hope you take it to heart, that came from Bill Rice Jr., that actually is the teaser to the most recent episode of UnWoke.Academy. That's episode, I think it's 104. Look for episode 104, the teaser. Certainly watch the whole thing. It's really informative. Bill Rice he's doing something similar and writes these really detailed, immersive things on Substack. Alicia is doing that work on all these different platforms, and I'm just sort of teasing this out, and I've actually had this conversation a few times with Alicia and people like her who are doing the work. They're doing the yeoman's work out there, scraping and fighting and clawing behind all the facades to find the hidden, murky, dark underworld in politics and things like it. Eventually, I can see different platforms that do a better job of cultivating and encouraging that type of journalism. So stay tuned on that front. And I think my instincts tell me that leading the charge on that, you're going to see Alicia Powe's name. She has the chops for it, the background, the connections and experience. Plus, you'll find some really great articles that she's written. She does a really good job of taking complex issues, and this is a compliment to you, Alicia, taking complex issues and putting them into understandable, bite-sized context and getting them out to us. We need a heck of a lot more of that in the world.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I think it's not like I ever decided to go dig in the crevices of the dark, sinister agenda or situations that occur in this country. It's more so just being, again, where did it start? On the tip line with, like I said, back in 2008 with people calling the White House tip line, demanding, insisting, begging for assistance. It doesn't really stop from there. I mean, whether you look at the effects it has on the people around you being sort of just this false paradigm of the world is really not just self-depleting, but it depletes their perception of what they can become what you can accomplish in this country. It keeps it when you're inundated with trash for media and music constantly, and you're in a low frequency state, you don't believe in yourself as much. You don't have as much confidence. You are more likely to become obese, given the society is putting obesogens in our food and programming you to have no self-esteem. And then if it's your friends and family who don't have that sort of optimistic perspective, you want to inspire, you want everything to become better, or should I say I do. And then this goes on, and the same thing, people throughout COVID, nurses and doctors, they back when I was accessible on a tip line, calling me at all hours of the day saying, for example, they're killing people in the hospital. I'm trying to save this person's life. I have to smuggle them medication that's going to actually treat them because they're putting them on intubators and remdesivir and saying they died of COVID. Or even, going place to place, and you see the stickers on the floor that says you have to social distance, against all of, I've said this so many times, against all logic, against everything that we know as a first grader to be germs versus not germs. It's just, and then the mask. And, I had a father who called me who was getting beaten by police security guards because after the governor had rescinded the mask mandate in his town, the school wanted to continue to enforce it. And then we're at this fight or flight state, especially over the past 4 years collectively. I think it's hard. Some of us focus on solutions. And then, of course, there's the political persecution, the weaponization of the Justice Department and the government agencies against everyday Americans. It's not a choice it could be a choice to stop answering the call and to resume work as an artist and turn it all off and unplug. But then you feel called to serve. It's why, people take the ultimate sacrifice in the military. Frontline doctors, again, when they didn't have to answer, some of the whistleblowing doctors, they didn't have to answer their phones and risk being deemed even a domestic terrorist of the state to save a life. I took it upon myself to say, you know what? At least I can type up the story. At least I'll go and figure out how to get Zoom running and let you speak. And for that, in the state we're at these days, with the unfortunate totalitarian aspect of things, chilling speech like never before in the United States, at least not in our lifetimes, with the technology at work to reinforce totalitarianism, it's been unbelievable. It's not something I chose. The atmosphere has certainly changed from 2008 or 2007 to now, as far as what people are saying, that the news, where does the news come from? Well, if someone's calling me and saying that they just got beaten by the security guards at their school and the principal is going along with all the COVID schemes against the small children, of course, bearing the brunt of it. Well, sorry, buddy, I'm not going to do this right now. I don't have time for it. Or tell the story. The people see what's going on. Not only does that gentleman get support for a lawyer or for his family while he gets, I would say, persecuted for rightfully standing for his son, but it does have a ripple effect, especially when a story goes viral. And we would hope the ripple effect would consist of institutional change for the better. But I think the disheartening thing is that's not always the case. Of course, energy always goes somewhere and has a cause and effect. So I think collectively, people like those whistleblowing doctors, like reporters who go on the front line, are doing a service. And that service, at this time particularly, could face backlash.
It's difficult to stand up against the powers that be, but we're seeing it happen. Frankly, I wish it was more and more people and more often, but we are seeing many examples of people who are standing up to the bullying of their, I want to call it leadership, I guess, the top brass within the military, many of whom have gone corrupt, and they're doing terrible things to our military. Same thing with the Department of Justice. We have great people all throughout our country, populating places like the FBI, and they, within the rank and file, need to do an excellent job right now, not a good job, but an excellent job of standing up to their bosses and their bosses' bosses and just say no. They need to stand up to them. Alicia, while you were talking, I pulled up an image on my phone. This is a meme that's been shared with me by friends of mine. I've shared it a number of times over the past several days on social media. This is a quote from Elie Wiesel. Some of my friends ask why I post so much political stuff. Here's my answer. Always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. That's a great quote, and it's actually a very compelling picture of Mr. Wiesel. That feeling called, many people feel that in different walks of life. And you mentioned America's frontline doctors. And I do believe that there are some really good, competent, constitutionally aware lawyers who are stepping up against the woke left in legal lawfare in that realm. There are many, many great journalists and reporters out there who are fighting and scraping and scrapping with their bosses. We've seen some. A few examples are people that have actually quit on air and told the public live that they are being coerced and manipulated into reporting things that they can't believe in, that they don't believe are truthful, and they've quit on air live. You, my friend, Alicia Powe, represent, in my book, a prime example of that type of courage and tenacity, that whatever it takes, we're going to scrap and fight our way through, but truth is the bedrock, and that's what's most important.
Well, it's certainly unfortunate that sometimes to do the right thing, to say the right thing, to stick like white on rice with the truth and the facts, whether it's at a place of work or in your school, it's not the fun path. It's not the easy path. And I mean, really, this sort of herd-mindedness we can see really start to develop in everyone around, especially maybe junior high school, right? Where there's the groups and the cliques. And how much can you stand alone for what is right versus following the herd? I suppose instinctively, some of us just want to follow along, or there's some safety or comfort in that. But I think this is a battle between good and evil ultimately. Where you're gonna probably, look at Jesus Christ as an example of what happens when you stick to doing what's right, but have faith that things are still going to ultimately be the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards truth, is what Martin Luther King said. And even if you look at the examples that we've witnessed over the past 6 months, even we have President Trump mysteriously and miraculously almost gets shot in the head, and he's still here standing today with an electoral victory. And I think to stop putting the onus or even idolizing our representatives and celebrities, and really look at yourself as the hero for your own life. I think that you change yourself, you change the world. I'm being too philosophical here, Jonathan, but I think the fundamental thing is that you're going to be tested, even if you're on the straight and narrow. And the more you're on the straight and narrow, even the more you will be tested or tried or gone through tribulations. And I think our whole nation is suffering from a sort of PTSD that we're not talking about. I think we've all witnessed so much in our lifetimes that could keep us shell-shocked for quite a while. And we're just going along with things, not really being quite open about how much it's affected us. Of course, we need to be strong and not live our lives in fear. But I also think addressing and looking at some of the issues is a way to foster healing and transcending the things that we've gone through that are devastating. I mean, and it's also to focus on what's positive versus what's bad. But when we resist persists, which you look at disappears. And for that sake, I'll say over the past 4 years, we've lived through the transgender, child abuse, Satanism. We've looked at things that we honor, like our military and even the executive office itself, be denigrated and degraded, excuse me. And we've looked at so much. And military members would call me saying that some of their colleagues were coughing out blood after they took the shot, and some of them died. And I live not too far from a military base where I feel like they're being held hostage there. some days, like when you look at the policies, the DEI, woke. I think I just wrote a story that was reported by the new incoming Department of Government Efficiency, showcasing that it's like what millions of dollars are going to transgender, gender affirming care for military children. We can just keep going, and bridges have collapsed. I think there was a story I was working on for a few months about all the manufacturing plants that had burned down. Mysteriously, an airplane crashed, like all kind. Let's not forget East Palestine, Ohio, where there was a train derailment that had synchronicities from a movie with the same plot line in the movie that happened. The bridge fell down. I mean, so much. And I'm staring. I have on my background a photo of Starbase, Texas, with the rockets that landed perfectly than they ever had in recorded human history. And I have faith. I have reinforcement of faith, though we've been tried and tested, Jonathan. So that was a little stream of consciousness there, because I can't say the last few years have been easy or fun, or that there's some reward in writing what's happening or producing video with this constant devastation of what I would call on paper manufactured crisis, a manufactured state of emergency.
Seems like a constant manufactured state of emergency. I'm going to return the favor and share with you some things that occurred to me while you were talking. One is I spent some time years ago reading a great deal about philosophy, and one of the people I discovered was Khalil Gibran, and it was Khalil Gibran who very famously said, "The deeper cuts the potter's wheel, the more the vessel will hold." So I hope for your sake individually and for our sake collectively that these periods of deep cutting that hurt deepen the vessel and allow us to experience a greater joy, perhaps at the conclusion when we find joyful things in life again. And also, as we talk about where we are and just the level of extreme corruption and depravity and the decay that is now painfully obvious, from media to military to many of the pillars of our society, like justice, the idea of court systems, a lot of it we're seeing massive corruption, and it stings, it hurts. My perspective that I encourage everybody to at least consider is looking at the evolution of warfare. The evolution of warfare gives a clear indication of where we are, why it's happening. So going back to, I'd like to use as a starting point the old colonial battles that used to happen with like the Redcoats and the British and the wars in Europe over land and territory. They used to go out in the field, and when muskets were invented, they would all line up dutifully and face each other and hold muskets, and then they would line and drop down to a knee and reload their muskets, and they would just stand there facing each other and shooting each other because that was viewed as chivalrous at the time. But then enter guerrilla warfare that threw everything completely in a different direction, and people had to scramble to make adjustments for this newly introduced or reintroduced type of warfare. War is constantly evolving, and there are many people, I happen to be one of them, who subscribes to the notion of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to throw out a couple of breadcrumbs here in this conversation, but the two generals and the Chinese military assessment of the US military in the late 1990s as a result of the Gulf War, the conclusion was the only way to truly tackle America and bring us down was to bring a fight from within and to use everything but. We're experiencing an everything but approach. It is everything except kinetic warfare. It's non-traditional. It's biological, it's currency, it's supply chain, it's medical, it is everything. It's psychological. All of that is what we're going through. So, Alicia, when you say this is PTSD and we have things that we haven't tackled and addressed, in my book, that's my definition. That is my working definition of where we are. This isn't some strange and unusual thing. It's by design. Our enemies have brought it about. It has everything to do with our open borders, with the COVID scare and the COVID, people call it plandemic, of 2020, the resulting biological injections and mRNA. It has to do with the balloons and things flying over our heads, and talk about UFOs, and now we have drones. That it's just the constant oppressive fear. All of that, all of it, every stitch of it, all factors together, and it's part of a very large plan to disrupt and alter fundamentally the United States and our system of government, and potentially kill off as many people as possible, which I can't just leave that right there. That has everything to do with a group of people who, for some time now, as evidenced by their comments and by a lot of Hollywood type representations of their belief system, believe fundamentally that there are far too many humans on Earth. So there, I said it. All of that stuff
It's
all comes
true.
together. Yep, it's definitely true. And many of us only know that because of journalists, because people out there are willing to dig and expose and connect the dots in meaningful ways and put it into an understandable format that we can get. It's podcasts, it's news articles, it is journalism. And I, for one, am thankful to have honest journalists like you.
Well, thank you again, Jonathan. I'm grateful for everyone who seeks the truth and appreciates the truth and doesn't try to retaliate against the truth. I'm not sure what question you'd like me to respond to based off what you said, but I always have a mouthful to say about all of these issues. As I said, I've been inundated in politics for a long, long time by now, in all kinds of ways, to understand the sociological, historical, mathematical aspects of all of this. I could talk about a lot of it for forever at this point. I'll say in response to what you said, there's a document I've been referencing for a long, long time that was on the Senate floor in 1963, written by Cleon Skowski, I believe his name is, and it's the 45 declared goals of communists to take over America. And you can see in that document they had a plan to deinstitutionalize, is that a good word? To destabilize the nuclear family, to take hold of our institutions, to make sure everybody has homosexual tendencies, therefore advancing his depopulation effort. And you got to say, who are they? Like, is it communism? Is it evil? Who? We always say they're going to do this. They're doing this next. The bad guys. Who are they? At the end of the day, I feel like this is definitely more metaphysical where we're at right now, and the environment that you can't see. Like you said, this is a non-kinetic war, and there's definitely attacks happening, but it's not the bombs at the window or the helicopters dropping grenades above. It's something else. It's a different kind of war or battle between good and evil than we've lived through before, with the technological advances, the prospect of AI, and really American culture becoming so secularized. And I think the secularization, it also morphs into the idolization of celebrity culture. And I think that's our biggest weakness, because we're a nation constitutionally, one nation under God. And the further we go away from our spiritual advances, the more susceptible we are to being infiltrated and marched off a cliff. I think right now, as much as we can appreciate all of the apps, I think we're all plugged into these apps now. If you want to look at the prospects of, say, Elon Musk would say we're already cyborgs, we had the phone. Well, you could also say, well, since the television at some dimension made us all cyborgs too, with its domineering influence over the collective, the pop culture. I think the answer in all of this, which I think would be counterproductive for a journalist who wants their work to be written and seen to say, is to tune it out, to spend time with your family, to spend time with nature, to spend time with self-development and spend time with your spirituality. If we don't know what perhaps there will be, I see astrologers and news forecasts, but maybe we will have first contact with extraterrestrial life in our lifetimes. Perhaps not. There's certainly bizarre happenings all over the place. And how do you cope? How do you allow the collective to, do you march with them off the cliff as a television slash apps are secularizing us? Or where your foundational principles stand? I think they should stand with yourself, your family, and unplugging from these devices, at least as much as possible, even turning off the Wi-Fi. And um, and then you can study the field, of course, of quantum physics and learn more about metaphysics. And then these people who are experts on the field, they'll tell you all of our thoughts are energy, that we create our own reality based on our sponsoring views, our daily feelings about a thing, and that produces a vibration. And that's a whole other science. I didn't choose that sort of science, perhaps, unfortunately, Jonathan. But I think it shows political science to study and history, and to make my career on continuing to write history, as the news every day is history tomorrow. But I think what's missing in the news as well is to foster a culture that's more solution oriented. I think we're constantly living in Armageddon every day, right? My favorite place to consume news is InfoWars, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't at the edge of my seat worrying about the apocalypse slash Armageddon based on what I'm being told there every day. And yet 1 year goes by and we're still here. 2, 5, 10, we're still here. But if we go along with the programming, so to speak, then we're in a constant state of fear the whole time. And our precious time here has been diminished by consuming so much negativity, primarily in the news and primarily on these apps that I think are bad for us, while they're a tool that we need and there's no going back. I don't think it's healthy to constantly be plugged in a device. I would surmise if we did a survey of human beings or Americans, whether they'd choose to be cyborgs, they resoundingly say no. Maybe a good chunk of them would say, yeah, sign me up to be a cyborg. But if we don't want to be cyborgs and have even what some reported things have been reported on 5G, 6G, controlling our minds through the nanoparticles in the vaccine, if that's not the destiny we want for ourselves, then go back to the basics. Go back to the basics that were embedded on us by our grandparents, Sunday dinners. And if it takes church to bring revival of spirituality, then go with the family to church, or just have a prayer, time for prayer. God is in charge, right? Should be. It is.
So there wasn't an implicit question in what I said, but you gave the answer that I was looking for anyway, which is to give my audience a glimpse into the way that your mind works and to hopefully get excited about finding you and reading your articles. And I love the way that you think and the clarity with which you put your thoughts together, and it shows in your articles. I'm going to wrap things up by encouraging everybody to also go back and watch, I forget the number of the episode, but several episodes ago at UnWoke.Academy, we had Odette Wilkins on talking about the impact of this new technology. So as Alicia talks about 5G and getting plugged in and becoming cyborg and all that stuff, that episode factors in heavily. These are the things that I try to bring to you, my unwoke audience, and you can get a sense from this conversation the types of things that Alicia Powe works on bringing to you via her journalism. I hope that you'll go and find her. I wish there were an immediate, easy answer to find her and fund her, but I'm hopeful that someday soon you're going to see opportunities to put, just like a magazine subscription or a streaming subscription or a newspaper or something, some way to incentivize and pay wonderful people out there putting everything at risk, like Alicia Powe, to bring us the news. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today and for everything that you do.
Thank you. God bless. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas and holidays and Happy New Year with their family. And of course, I remind myself every day to always focus on what we're grateful for. Even no matter where you are today, things will get better if you stay in a state of gratitude, is what I think is true across all the ups and downs that we've been through here, because there's more tragic stories, but there's a lot to be grateful for. So I think that's the cornerstone of all success is humility, but especially gratitude.
Bingo. Well said. Thanks again, Alicia.